Sorry, this seat is already taken. You should find another place. Before this goes further, I think the captain should review the passenger protocol.
According to Protocol 7, this seat assignment requires immediate review.
The flight attendant noticed the problem before anyone else did. Maya Ellison was standing beside seat 2A with a boarding pass in her hand, watching a woman already settled into the leather first-class seat that had been assigned to her. The woman looked up slowly, as if Maya's presence was an interruption. "I think there's been a mistake," Maya said. Her voice stayed calm. That was the first thing people often underestimated about her. They expected anger when they saw a black woman challenging a situation that clearly wasn't right. They expected frustration, volume, maybe a scene. Maya gave them none of that. She simply held out her boarding pass. The passenger glanced at it, then at the seat. "I'm sorry," the woman replied, adjusting the designer scarf around her neck. "I'm pretty sure this is my seat." Maya looked at the number printed beside the woman's elbow. 2A. Then she looked at her own ticket. 2A. Mistake was simple. The response to it was not. Around them, other first-class passengers began placing bags in overhead compartments and settling into their seats. The quiet sounds of the cabin continued, luggage wheels rolling across the aisle, coffee cups being arranged, flight attendants checking safety equipment. But the space around seat 2A had changed. The passenger lowered her voice. "Maybe you should check with the gate agent. Sometimes these things happen." Maya almost smiled, because she had heard that sentence before. Not in airplanes. Not always. But in boardrooms, conference rooms, and investment meetings where people assumed her presence required explanation. At 42 years old, Maya Ellison was the founder and CEO of Ellison Aviation Systems, a company that built safety software used by regional carriers across the country. She had spent 15 years developing technology that helped airlines predict maintenance failures before they became emergencies. She knew aircraft systems better than most people sitting in that cabin. But she also knew something else. A person could have every credential in the world and still be asked to prove they belonged. The flight attendant, Lauren Pierce, approached after noticing the situation. "Is everything okay here?" Maya handed over her boarding pass. "I believe there's been a seat assignment issue." Lauren scanned the ticket. Her expression changed slightly. "Ms. Ellison, yes, this is definitely seat 2A." The woman in the seat immediately looked toward Lauren. "I was told during boarding that this section was open. I assumed there was a change." Lauren hesitated. It was a small hesitation. Most people would have missed it. Maya didn't. It was the hesitation of someone trying to decide whether solving the problem quickly was worth making someone uncomfortable. "I can check the manifest," Lauren said. The woman leaned back. "Do we really need to make this complicated?" The words were polite. The meaning wasn't. Maya felt the familiar pressure to make herself smaller, to avoid the attention, to accept the inconvenience because explaining the obvious sometimes cost more energy than enduring it. Years earlier, when she was still trying to raise funding for her company, an investor had told her she was surprisingly technical. She had remembered that phrase for a long time, not because it hurt, because it revealed what people expected before she ever spoke. Lauren returned a moment later with a tablet. "There is no change," she said. "Seat 2A belongs to Ms. Ellison." The woman looked annoyed. "I paid for first class, so did I," Maya replied. The answer was quiet, but it landed differently because it was true. The woman stood, but not before giving Maya one final look. "You could have just handled this privately." Maya picked up her bag. "I tried." A few passengers nearby looked away. Others watched carefully, pretending they weren't watching. Maya sat down and placed her laptop bag beneath the seat. She thought the situation was over. It wasn't. 10 minutes later, after the cabin doors closed, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, before departure, we need to complete a required operational review under Protocol 7. The cabin became still. Protocol 7. Most passengers had never heard those words, but Maya had, and so had Lauren. Because Protocol 7 was not a customer service procedure. It was an aviation accountability procedure. A procedure used when a passenger dispute involved a question about seat authority, identity verification, or a potential failure in the boarding process. The captain continued. This review requires confirmation of the original assignment record and the chain of decisions that led to the current seating arrangement. Maya looked toward the cockpit door. For the first time that morning, she wondered whether the seat dispute was not just a misunderstanding, because someone had changed something, and the question was no longer who belonged in 2A. The question was who had decided they could take it. The announcement changed the atmosphere in the cabin, not because anyone understood what Protocol 7 meant, because the captain's voice had made one thing clear. The airline was no longer treating what happened as a simple seating disagreement. Lauren approached Maya's row a few minutes later. "Mrs. Ellison, may I ask you to remain seated for a moment?" Maya nodded. "Of course." Across the aisle, the woman who had taken seat 2A folded her arms. "I hope this isn't going to delay everyone." Her tone carried the frustration of someone who believed inconvenience was proof that the process itself was unnecessary. Lauren did not respond immediately. Instead, she looked at the tablet in her hand. That was when Maya noticed something unusual. Lauren was not looking at the passenger manifest. She was looking at the boarding history. The difference mattered. A seat assignment was a final result. A boarding history showed how that result happened. Within the aviation industry, that distinction could separate a mistake from a violation. A few minutes later, the first officer stepped out from the cockpit. He was carrying a printed document instead of a tablet. That caught Maya's attention. Modern airlines rarely printed records unless something needed to be preserved outside the normal digital workflow. "Good morning," he said to the passengers in the first-class cabin. "We apologize for the delay. We are completing a required verification." The woman in 2A immediately raised her hand. "Can I explain what happened? I was told there was a seating adjustment." The first officer looked at her. "I'll speak with everyone involved individually." That answer was calm but firm. For the first time, the woman looked uncertain. Maya watched quietly. She had spent years in executive meetings, learning that the most important information often appeared in moments when people thought they were only handling logistics. A rushed explanation, a missing document, a person trying to control the order of events. The first officer approached Lauren. "Show me the original assignment." Lauren handed him the tablet. He reviewed it carefully. Then he looked at the printed document. "There's a mismatch." The phrase was simple, but it changed everything. The passenger in 2A leaned forward. "What mismatch?" The first officer looked at her, then at Maya. The seat assignment was modified after the boarding window closed. A few passengers exchanged looks. Maya felt something tighten in her chest. Not anger. Recognition. Someone had not accidentally occupied her seat. Someone had changed the record after the normal process was complete. The woman shook her head. "I didn't change anything." "No one is saying you did," the first officer replied. That distinction mattered. He was separating involvement from responsibility. Maya noticed. A weaker investigation would have immediately searched for a person to blame. A proper one would first determine what happened. The first officer continued. "The system shows that seat 2A was reassigned from Ms. Ellison's ticket after boarding had begun." Lauren looked surprised. "After boarding started?" "Yes, the cabin became more attentive, because now the issue was no longer about two passengers wanting the same seat. It was about a process being altered." Maya turned toward the window. Below them, the airport moved through its morning rhythm. Ground vehicles crossed the pavement. Bags traveled beneath the aircraft. Employees followed routines built around timing and precision. Airlines depended on systems because human assumptions could fail. She knew that better than most. The first officer returned to the cockpit for several minutes. When he came back, he had another update. "The original seat assignment has been restored." The woman stood halfway. "So I have to move because of a computer issue?" "No," the first officer said. His response was immediate. "You are moving because the verified assignment belongs to another passenger." The woman looked at Maya. A small crowd of passengers had stopped pretending not to listen. Maya expected embarrassment. She expected anger. Instead, she saw something more complicated. The woman looked confused, almost as if she had expected the process to eventually agree with her. Lauren helped move the woman's belongings to her new seat. Then the first officer remained beside Maya's row. "Mrs. Ellison, there is one additional matter." Maya looked up. "What matter?" The reassignment request came from someone with internal access. The words were carefully chosen. Internal access, not accusation, not conclusion, just a fact. Maya closed her laptop. "Someone inside the airline changed my seat?" The first officer nodded. "And under Protocol 7, we are required to determine why." For the first time since boarding, Maya realized the seat was never the entire story. Someone had made a decision before she ever reached the aircraft. And now the question was not whether she belonged in first class. The question was why someone inside the system believed they had the authority to remove her from it. The captain's announcement came through the speakers again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience. Our departure will be delayed briefly while we complete a required internal verification." The word internal stayed with Maya. It was not the kind of word airlines used when a passenger simply sat in the wrong seat. It meant the question had moved beyond the cabin. Someone had touched a system they were not supposed to touch. Lauren returned to Maya's row after speaking with the first officer. "Ms. Ellison, I want to apologize for the confusion." Maya looked at her. "Thank you. But I'm more interested in understanding how it happened." Lauren nodded. "That is what we're trying to determine." Maya appreciated the answer, not because it solved anything. Because Lauren did not offer the easiest response. She did not say it was a glitch. She did not say someone misunderstood. She did not rush to make the situation disappear. In her experience, the first explanation offered was often the one people wanted everyone to accept. Across the aisle, the woman who had occupied seat 2A was now sitting in 3C. Her name, according to the passenger manifest, was Evelyn Hart. She was a financial consultant traveling to a conference in Denver. Maya noticed something interesting. Evelyn was no longer angry. She was watching the crew. That told Maya something. Evelyn might not have created the problem, but she had realized there was a problem. The first officer approached again. "Ms. Ellison, I'm Commander Daniel Reeves." Maya introduced herself. "Daniel, I assume Protocol 7 has a reason for being activated." "It does." He glanced toward the cabin door before continuing. "Protocol 7 exists because seating disputes can sometimes reveal larger operational failures, unauthorized changes, employee misuse, improper upgrades, or inaccurate records." Maya nodded. "Who requested the change?" "We are still confirming that." She studied his expression. Not every person who withheld information was hiding something. Sometimes they were simply refusing to speak before they had facts. That difference mattered. "Was my name involved?" Maya asked. Daniel paused. "Yes." That answer carried weight. "How? The system shows your reservation was flagged for secondary review." Maya frowned. "Why?" "That is what we are investigating." A flight attendant walked past them carrying coffee cups. The normal rhythm of the cabin continued around a situation that was no longer normal. Maya lowered her voice. "Was the flag created because of my company?" Daniel looked surprised. "Why would you ask that?" "Because my company has contracts with airlines. Sometimes people assume they understand my position before they understand me." She did not say the rest. She did not need to. Daniel understood enough. A few minutes later, he returned with a printed record. This time, he placed it carefully on the empty space between them. "This is the original audit trail." Maya looked down. There were timestamps, access records, employee identification numbers, and one entry that stood out. The change had not been made by a gate agent. It had not been made by a customer service representative. It had been approved through a supervisor-level account. Maya looked up. "Someone with authority changed this." Daniel nodded. Maya looked toward the front of the cabin. She thought about all the ways this could have ended. If she had accepted the seat change. If she had decided not to question it. If she had assumed it was easier to avoid conflict. The record would have remained unchanged. The system would have quietly recorded a false version of events. And someone else would have learned that the shortcut worked. That was the part that bothered her. Not losing seat 2A. The possibility that someone had built a process where certain people were expected not to challenge the decision. Daniel studied her carefully. Miss Ellison, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Have you had any previous interaction with our company? What happened? She looked at the audit trail again. 6 months earlier, Ellison Aviation Systems had submitted a safety analysis proposal to the airline. The proposal had been rejected, not because of technical issues, because someone had told her company they were not the right fit for the current direction. At the time, Maya accepted the decision. Companies made choices. Not every rejection had a hidden reason, but now she wondered, was this a coincidence? Or was someone inside the airline connecting her name with an old decision? Before she could answer, Daniel's radio activated. A voice came through. "Captain, we have confirmed the source of the override request." Daniel listened. His expression changed slightly. Then he looked at Maya. The request came from the office of a senior executive. The cabin seemed quieter. Not because everyone heard the words, because Maya did. A person with influence had not just taken a seat, they had changed a record. And now Protocol 7 was no longer investigating a passenger dispute. It was investigating whether power inside the airline had been used to rewrite the rules for one person. Maya did not answer immediately. Not because she was surprised, because she was calculating. A senior executive's office was not a person. It was a position inside a system. Positions could be misunderstood. Names could be attached to actions without the person knowing, and accusations made too early could turn a valid concern into a defensive battle. She had built a company by learning one rule: facts first. Always. "Who authorized the request?" Maya asked. Commander Reeves looked at the report again. "The system shows the override was submitted through the Executive Operations Channel. That is not the same as saying the executive personally submitted it." "No," Daniel said. "It is not." Maya nodded. That answer mattered, because she had seen companies destroy people by confusing access with intent. A person could hold the key. That did not always mean they turned the lock. Daniel continued. "We are reviewing the authorization chain now. Protocol 7 requires that we preserve the original record before any corrective action is taken." "Good," Maya replied. Daniel looked slightly surprised. Most passengers, after hearing that someone powerful may have been involved, would immediately ask for names. Maya asked for preservation, because she understood something many people outside corporate systems never saw. The first person who controlled the story often controlled the outcome, and stories became difficult to correct once records disappeared. The captain's office contacted the cabin crew again. Lauren listened carefully through her headset. When she removed it, she walked toward Maya. "There is something else you should know." Maya looked up. "What?" The original seat change was not part of an upgrade request. That was unusual. A first-class seat could be changed for many reasons: operational adjustments, equipment issues, weight distribution, special accommodations. But this was different. "What was it labeled as?" Maya asked. Lauren hesitated. "Customer reassignment." Maya repeated the phrase quietly. Customer reassignment. She knew corporate language. Sometimes the most important information was hidden inside ordinary words. A customer reassignment sounded harmless, a person moving from one seat to another, but language could erase the human being inside the decision. Who was the customer being prioritized? Maya asked. Lauren looked uncomfortable. "I don't have permission to disclose another passenger's information." Maya nodded. "Good," Lauren blinked. "Good, yes." For the first time that morning, Maya showed a small smile. Privacy rules should protect everyone, not only people with influence. Lauren relaxed slightly. The answer reminded her that Maya was not trying to win a personal battle. She was trying to understand a process. A few rows behind them, Evelyn Hart watched the exchange. Eventually, she stood and approached. Evelyn looked different now, less defensive, more uncertain. "I want to apologize." Maya waited. Evelyn glanced around before continuing. "When I sat there, I assumed the seat had been given to me because someone had made a mistake in my favor." Maya said nothing. "I didn't ask why." That sentence carried more weight than any excuse. Evelyn continued. "I should have checked." Maya studied her. There was no dramatic apology, no attempt to make herself the victim, just a person admitting she had accepted convenience without questioning where it came from. "Thank you for saying that," Maya replied. Evelyn nodded. Then she lowered her voice. "I saw something before boarding." Maya looked at her. "What?" "There was a man near the gate desk. Do you know who he was?" "No." "What did he do?" Evelyn thought carefully. "He looked at the screen after I gave my name. Then he told the agent, 'We can take care of that seat.'" Maya felt her attention sharpen. "Did you hear anything else?" "No." "Did you see the screen?" "No." That was the difference between a witness and a rumor. Evelyn had not seen the entire event. She had seen one moment. But one moment could matter. Daniel returned shortly afterward. This time his expression was more serious. "We have identified the account holder." Maya looked at him. "And?" "The account belongs to the airline's vice president of guest experience." The title landed differently than a random employee. A person responsible for passenger satisfaction. A person whose department controlled complaints, loyalty programs, and premium services, Daniel continued. "But there is another issue." Maya waited. "The executive says they did not authorize the change." A pause followed. "So someone used their access?" Daniel nodded. "Or someone convinced someone with access to approve it." Maya looked down at the audit trail again. The problem had changed. At first, she thought someone had decided she did not belong in seat 2A. Now she realized something more complicated had happened. Someone had built a path through the system where that decision could happen without leaving an obvious name behind. And if that path existed for her, it existed for other passengers too. The plane remained parked at the gate. Hundreds of people were waiting. But Maya understood the delay was no longer about one passenger. Protocol 7 had uncovered something bigger. A system designed to protect fairness had been used to bypass it, and now the airline had to decide whether it wanted to protect the person who misused the system or fix the system itself. Maya watched Commander Reeves walk back toward the cockpit. For a few seconds she remained still. Not because she was afraid, because she understood what happened when a problem moved from a personal dispute into an institutional one. The rules changed. A passenger could demand answers. A company had to prove them. She closed the audit report on her lap and looked at the cabin around her. The first-class section had returned to its normal rhythm. A few passengers whispered quietly. Others stared at their phones, pretending they were not following what had become the most unusual delay they had experienced in years. But Maya noticed something important. Nobody was asking about the seat anymore. They were asking about the process. That was always where the real issue lived. A few minutes later, a woman in a Navy airline uniform entered the cabin. She was not part of the flight crew. Her badge identified her as Rachel Monroe, Director of Operational Compliance. Maya recognized the role immediately. Compliance was not customer service. Compliance existed to investigate when customer service failed. "Mrs. Ellison," Rachel said, stopping beside the row. "I'm Rachel Monroe. I've been asked to oversee the Protocol 7 review." Maya nodded. "Thank you for coming." Rachel looked toward the surrounding passengers. "I would like to speak with you privately if possible." Maya glanced around. "Of course." They moved to the front galley area, where the noise from the cabin softened. Rachel held a folder, not a tablet, another printed document. Maya noticed the pattern. More people were preserving records. That meant the airline understood this was no longer routine. "I want to clarify something," Rachel began. "Protocol 7 was not created because someone lost a seat assignment. I know, it exists because unauthorized adjustments can create operational risk." Maya folded her arms. "What kind of risk?" Rachel opened the folder. "Passenger priority manipulation, incorrect manifest information, unauthorized service changes. In extreme cases, security concerns." Maya looked at the document. "And this happened because someone changed my seat? Potentially." Rachel chose the word carefully. Maya respected that. A weaker investigator would have arrived with a conclusion. A good one arrived with questions. "What has been confirmed?" Maya asked. Rachel looked down. "3 things." She raised one finger. "First, your original first-class assignment was valid." A second finger. "Second, the change occurred after the standard boarding process had begun." A third. "Third, the request passed through a restricted access channel." Maya waited. And what has not been confirmed? Rachel paused. Whether the person who initiated the request intended to target you specifically. There it was. The difference between suspicion and proof. Maya appreciated it. But she also knew something else. Intent was not always required for harm to happen. A system could still be unfair even when nobody admitted wanting it to be. Rachel, Maya said, how often does Protocol 7 get activated? The woman looked surprised by the question. Rarely. How rarely? Rachel hesitated. 4 times in the last 5 years, and how many involved a premium passenger reassignment? 2. Maya looked back toward the cabin. Were both cases reviewed the same way? Rachel did not answer immediately. That pause was information. But that does not mean they were mishandled. I didn't say they were. Rachel studied her. You're not trying to prove discrimination. Maya looked at her. I'm trying to understand whether the system notices certain people faster than others. That sentence stayed between them, because it was not an accusation. It was a question, and questions were harder to dismiss. Rachel opened another page. There is one more detail. Maya waited. The person whose seat request was prioritized. Evelyn Hart? Yes. What about her? She did not request a first-class upgrade. Maya frowned. Then why was her name connected to the change? Rachel looked uncomfortable. That is what we are trying to determine. The answer created another problem. If Evelyn had not asked for the seat, then she was not the person who benefited from the request. She was only the person placed into the position. A piece on the board. Not necessarily the person moving the pieces. Maya thought back to the gate. The phrase Evelyn remembered. We can take care of that seat, not give her that seat, not move Maya Ellison. Just enough words to make something happen without explaining why. Rachel received a message on her phone. She read it once, then again. The gate records were accessed. By who? That's the problem. Someone deleted them? Rachel shook her head. No, a pause. Someone requested an emergency preservation lock. Maya looked confused. That sounds like a good thing. It is. Then why do you look concerned? Rachel closed the folder. Because only one person should have authority to request that lock during an active Protocol 7 investigation. Maya waited. Rachel answered. The airline's chief executive officer. For the first time that morning, Maya felt the situation move beyond a mistake, beyond an employee decision, beyond a single executive office. Someone at the highest level of the company had become involved. The question was no longer whether someone had taken her seat. The question was why the entire organization was now trying to protect the record of what happened before anyone could see it. Rachel's words followed Maya back to her seat. The CEO had requested the preservation lock. That fact should have been reassuring. A leader protecting records during a compliance review was exactly what a responsible executive should do. But Maya had spent enough time inside corporations to understand the difference between transparency and control. Preserving a record meant keeping the truth safe. Controlling access to that record could mean deciding who got to see it. When Rachel returned to the compliance team near the finale, Maya opened her laptop but did not begin working. Instead, she watched. She watched who spoke first, who avoided eye contact, who checked their phone after receiving updates. In meetings, she had learned that people revealed priorities before they revealed information. A few minutes later, Daniel Reeves returned. Miss Ellison, we have an update. Maya looked up. Please. The CEO's preservation request was valid. She nodded. And it was not related to hiding the record. Maya waited. Daniel continued. The request was made because the CEO wanted the original audit trail protected before anyone with access could modify it. That changed the meaning. Maya leaned back slightly. So the CEO suspected someone inside the company might alter the information? Yes. Daniel looked toward Rachel. Rachel answered, because the access pattern was unusual. She opened the folder again. The system shows multiple people viewed your reservation before the change occurred. Only 2. The number sat there. 5 people. 5 opportunities for someone to notice something was wrong. 5 chances to ask why a valid first-class assignment was being changed. And nobody stopped it, Maya said. Rachel shook her head. No, that was the part that mattered. The problem was no longer just the person who changed the seat. The problem was everyone who saw the change and accepted it. Maya looked across the cabin at Evelyn, the passenger who had taken the seat, the person everyone initially thought was responsible. But Evelyn had not created the problem. She had simply benefited from a decision she never requested. That detail bothered Maya, because systems often worked this way. The person receiving the advantage became the visible target. The person creating the advantage remained invisible. Rachel lowered her voice. There is another reason the CEO became involved. Maya looked at her. What reason? Your company. Maya was quiet. She had expected that possibility. What about my company? Rachel glanced at the folder. 6 months ago, your aviation safety proposal was rejected by our Executive Technology Committee. Yes, the person who signed off on that rejection was the same vice president whose department access was used in this incident. Maya's expression did not change, but internally, a connection formed. Not a conclusion, a connection. Are you saying this was retaliation? Rachel shook her head. I'm saying we are investigating whether a previous business disagreement influenced an operational decision. That was the right language. But she also felt something heavier, because she remembered that meeting. She remembered sitting across from executives who barely asked about the technology. They had spent more time discussing whether her company was ready for a larger partnership. At the time, she thought it was normal business skepticism. Now she wondered whether some people had already decided what they thought about her before reviewing what she built. The captain's voice came over the speaker. Passengers, thank you for your patience. We are continuing our operational review and expect an update shortly. The cabin waited. Maya looked out the window. The aircraft was still connected to the gate. Still. A machine designed to move hundreds of people across the country had been stopped because a record did not match Ashida. And strangely, Maya thought that was exactly what should happen. Systems were supposed to stop when something did not make sense. People were supposed to ask questions. The danger was not that a mistake happened. Mistakes happened everywhere. The danger was when a system learned that certain mistakes were acceptable because the person affected was unlikely to challenge them. Rachel received another message. This time, she did not immediately speak. Maya noticed. What is it? Rachel looked at the screen. The executive who approved the original request has arrived at the gate. Maya turned. Why? Rachel locked the phone. To provide a statement. And Rachel hesitated. To explain why your seat assignment was changed. Maya closed her laptop. For the first time since boarding, she felt the story moving toward the person at the center of it, not the passenger in the seat, not the flight crew, not the system. The person who believed they had enough authority to change a record and expected nobody to ask why. The man who entered the aircraft a few minutes later did not look like someone expecting a confrontation. That was the first thing Maya noticed. He was not angry. He was not defensive. He walked with the controlled pace of someone who had spent years entering rooms where people waited for his decisions. Rachel introduced him. Mr. Ellison, this is Victor Hale, Vice President of Guest Experience. Victor nodded. Hale. The title was unnecessary. Everyone in that cabin already knew who he was. He was the person whose department had access to the system. The person whose office was connected to the seat reassignment. The person who now had to explain why. Victor remained standing. I want to begin by apologizing for the delay. Maya looked at him. Are you apologizing for the delay or the seat change? The question was direct. Victor paused. A fair question. That answer surprised her slightly. Many executives responded to difficult questions by redirecting. Victor did not. At this moment, I am apologizing for the fact that our process created a situation where a valid passenger assignment was altered without proper explanation. Maya listened carefully. He had chosen his words. Not I made a mistake. Not my team made a mistake. Not someone misunderstood. The apology was about the process. That was either a sign of responsibility or a carefully prepared statement. Maya needed more information. Did you authorize the change? Victor looked toward Rachel, then back at Maya. No, the answer came quickly. But your department's access was used. Yes. And the person who used it had permission. Victor's expression tightened slightly. That is what we are investigating. Maya nodded. Then why was my reservation flagged? The question changed the room. Victor looked uncomfortable for the first time. I don't know. Maya studied him. You are the vice president responsible for guest experience, and you do not know why a customer's reservation was flagged? Victor exhaled slowly. I know what the system shows. I do not yet know why someone made that decision. That distinction mattered, but it did not remove responsibility. Maya glanced at Rachel. Can we see the original flag? Rachel looked at Victor. Victor hesitated. A small hesitation. But this time, Maya noticed something different. It was not the hesitation of someone hiding information. It was the hesitation of someone realizing the information would make the company uncomfortable. Rachel? Maya asked. Rachel answered. Under Protocol 7, Ms. Ellison has the right to understand the basis of the review involving her. Victor nodded. Show her. Rachel opened the file. The reservation flag appeared on the page. Premium seating verification required. Maya looked up. That is not a reason. It is a category, Victor said. For what? For situations where the system identifies a discrepancy. Maya pointed to the screen. What discrepancy? Nobody answered immediately. That silence told her enough. Because if there had been a real discrepancy, someone would have said it. Wrong passenger information. Instead, there was only a category, a label, a box someone had checked. Maya looked at Victor. Who created the discrepancy? Victor looked down. We don't know. But someone had to. Yes. And someone decided it required removing me from my assigned seat. Victor did not argue. That was important. He understood the sequence. The problem was not just the final action. The problem was the chain of assumptions before it. Rachel stepped closer. There is another finding. Everyone looked at her. The flag was created 7 minutes after you scanned your boarding pass. Maya frowned. Maya turned toward him. Why? Because the verification system is designed to identify issues before boarding is completed. Rachel nodded. That is correct. Maya looked at the audit trail. A passenger had boarded, a seat had been assigned. A system had approved everything. Then afterward, someone went back and created a problem. That was not a correction. It was a change. Mr. Hale, Maya said, what would happen if nobody questioned this? Victor answered honestly. The record would show the reassignment as a completed adjustment. And the original assignment? It would remain in the history. But most people would only see the final result. Victor did not respond. Because he knew she was right. A system could preserve information and still hide the truth. Maya looked around the cabin, at the passengers, at the crew, at Evelyn, who had unknowingly become part of a process she never requested. Then she looked back at Victor. I have one question. Go ahead. Was I selected because I was the easiest passenger to move? The question was quieter than the others, but it carried more weight. Victor looked at the record, then at Maya. I don't know. For the first time, Maya believed he might be telling the truth. But honesty, after damage, did not erase the damage. The investigation had confirmed something important. Nobody could yet prove why her seat was targeted. But everyone now knew one thing. A system had allowed someone to make that decision, and the next question was no longer who moved Maya Ellison. It was how many other people had been moved before her, and never asked why. Maya had learned a long time ago that the most dangerous failures inside organizations were rarely the dramatic ones. They were the quiet ones. A box checked without review. A decision approved because nobody wanted to slow the process down. A person moved aside because everyone assumed someone else had already verified the reason. That was how systems developed blind spots. Not through one person's bad decision, through hundreds of small moments where nobody stopped to ask a question. Rachel remained beside the galley, reviewing the documents. Victor Hale stood nearby, no longer looking like a senior executive controlling the conversation. He looked like someone trying to understand how something inside his own department had happened without him knowing. That distinction mattered. Maya had worked with enough executives to know that authority and awareness were not the same thing. A person could be powerful and still be disconnected from what their systems allowed. Mr. Hale, Maya said, how many people can create a premium seating verification flag? Who are the three? Victor looked toward Rachel. Rachel answered, "Authorized supervisors in operations, guest experience leadership, and compliance." Maya looked back at Victor. "So someone with significant access created the flag, but we still don't know who." "That's correct." "And someone with even higher access approved the movement." "Yes." She looked down at the record again. The chain was becoming clearer. But one piece was missing. The person who started it. "Can we see the first access point?" Maya asked. Rachel looked surprised. "You mean the first person who opened your reservation?" "Yes." Victor stepped closer. "Why?" "Because the first person who looks at a record is often the person who creates the context for everyone after them." Nobody answered. Because that was exactly how investigations worked. People rarely acted on raw information. They acted on the interpretation of the person before them. Rachel pulled up another section of the audit trail. This information was not included in the initial review. Why? Because Protocol 7 originally focused on the seat change itself. Maya looked at her. And that was the mistake. Rachel did not disagree. They reviewed the timeline. 7:41 a.m. reservation accessed. 7:43 a.m. Passenger profile viewed. 7 verification flag created. 7:51 a.m. Seat reassignment submitted. 7:54 a.m. boarding completed. Maya stared at the sequence. The timing mattered. The seat was not changed because of a boarding error. The process began before the seat was taken. Someone had looked at her information first, then created a reason to question it. "Who accessed my profile at 7:41? Maya asked. Rachel typed. The system searched. Everyone waited. Then the screen displayed a name, not Victor. Not someone from his office. A gate supervisor. Rachel read it quietly. Thomas Avery. Gate operations supervisor. 15 years with the airline. Was he involved in my boarding? Yes. Did he make the final seat change? No. But he started the chain. Victor nodded slowly. That was the first concrete link they had. Not the conclusion. A link. Daniel Reeves returned from the cockpit. "We received confirmation from the gate team." Rachel turned. "About Thomas Avery?" Daniel looked surprised. "Yes." Maya watched their reactions. The name meant something. "What happened?" she asked. Daniel looked at Rachel, then at Victor. "Thomas says he flagged the reservation because he believed there was a discrepancy between the passenger profile and the booking history." Maya remained quiet. "Did he explain the discrepancy?" Daniel hesitated. "He said he was concerned the reservation did not match what he expected." The sentence sounded harmless, almost professional, but Maya caught the important word, expected. Daniel looked at the report. He did not specify. Maya looked out toward the airport through the window. That was the moment the situation changed again. Because now they were no longer looking only at a broken process. They were looking at judgment. A person had seen information, made an assumption, and turned that assumption into an official action. Rachel closed the folder. "Mrs. Ellison, I want to ask you something." "Okay. When you arrived at the gate, did anyone ask you for additional identification?" Maya thought back. "No." "Did anyone question your ticket?" "No." "Did anyone question your payment?" "No." Rachel nodded. Then the concern was not about verification. Maya looked at her. "What was it about?" Rachel did not answer immediately. She looked toward the audit trail, then toward the cabin. Finally, she said, "The person who created the flag saw enough information to make a decision." A pause, but not enough information to make a fair one. The words were not dramatic. They did not need to be. Because everyone in that cabin understood what had just been uncovered. The seat was only the visible result. The real problem started earlier, with someone deciding what kind of passenger Maya Ellison was before they ever asked who she actually was. Maya did not respond immediately. She had spent years sitting across from executives, investors, and engineers who believed data was objective simply because it appeared on a screen. But data was never the first step. Someone chose what to collect. Someone chose what to label. Someone chose what deserved attention. The screen in front of Rachel contained numbers and timestamps. It looked neutral. But behind those numbers was a person's judgment. And that judgment had moved Maya from a confirmed first-class seat into the situation where she had to prove she belonged. Again. Rachel closed the audit window. We need to interview Thomas Avery directly. Maya nodded. Will he be removed from duty? Victor answered before Rachel could. Not until the review is complete. Maya looked at him. That answer was important. A weaker leader would have immediately punished someone to show action. A stronger leader would protect the investigation first. Good, Maya said. Victor looked surprised. You agree? I agree that facts should come before consequences. She paused. But facts should also lead somewhere. Victor nodded. He understood. Accountability was not the same as revenge. The aircraft remained at the gate. Outside the window, passengers from other flights moved through the terminal without knowing that a single seat assignment had exposed a much larger problem. Inside the cabin, Protocol 7 continued. A few minutes later, Thomas Avery entered. He was older than Maya expected, late 50s, gray hair. A man who carried himself like someone who had spent many years solving problems quickly. Not someone who saw himself as part of one. He looked uncomfortable when he saw the group waiting for him. Thomas, Rachel said, thank you for joining us. He nodded. I understand there was a mistake with a passenger assignment. A mistake. The first instinct was already visible. Rachel gestured toward an empty seat. We are reviewing the sequence of events that led to the reassignment of seat 2A. Thomas glanced at Maya, then quickly looked away. That small movement did not prove anything, but it was a detail. And details mattered. Can you explain why you accessed Ms. Ellison's reservation? Rachel asked. Thomas sat down. I was checking boarding records. For what reason? There was something unusual. What was unusual? Thomas looked at the tablet in front of him. The reservation. Maya leaned slightly forward. What about it? Thomas looked uncomfortable. It did not match what I expected for that cabin. The sentence hung there. Rachel immediately followed. What do you mean by expected? Thomas hesitated. I mean, the booking details seemed inconsistent. Which details? Thomas looked toward Victor, then back at Rachel. I don't remember every detail. Maya noticed the pattern. The explanation was becoming less specific. The closer they moved toward the actual decision, the less certain the language became. What did you verify before creating the flag? Rachel asked. Thomas answered quickly. The system information. Did you verify the passenger's identity? Then, what exactly required additional review? Thomas was silent. The question was simple, but it reached the center of the problem. If everything official matched, what had caused the doubt? Thomas rubbed his hands together. I was trying to protect the airline. Maya heard that sentence often in corporate environments. Protect the company. Protect the customer. Protect the brand. Sometimes those words represented genuine responsibility. Sometimes they became a shield for decisions nobody wanted to examine. Rachel remained calm. Protect the airline from what? Thomas looked at Maya, only for a second, but everyone saw it. I thought there might be a mismatch. Avery. He looked at her. What information made you believe I did not belong in that seat? The question was not aggressive. That made it harder to avoid. Thomas looked down. I don't know. Maya held his gaze. You don't know. I mean, I made a judgment based on the information available. What information? Another pause. Then Thomas said, your profile. Rachel looked up. Your passenger profile? Maya understood before he finished. That was the most dangerous type of bias. The kind people struggled to describe because they had never been required to examine it. A feeling. An assumption. A sense that something did not fit. A system could not measure that, but a person could still turn it into an official decision. Rachel asked one final question. Mr. Avery, if the passenger had been someone else with the exact same ticket, same payment, same reservation, and same travel history, would you have created the same flag? Thomas did not answer. The silence was the answer. Nobody in the cabin moved. Maya looked at the man across from her, not with anger, with disappointment. Because she knew this was how many unfair decisions happened. Not with someone openly saying they wanted to harm another person, but with someone trusting a feeling more than a fact. Thomas stood. Before walking away, he stopped. I didn't mean for this to happen. Maya looked at him. I believe you. He seemed surprised. Then she continued. But harm does not always begin with what someone means. Thomas left, and for the first time that morning, The airline had something more difficult than a mistake. It had a pattern, because now the question was no longer whether one employee made a bad judgment. The question was whether the system had been designed to allow those judgments to become official decisions. The meeting did not end when Thomas Avery left. That was the difference between a real investigation and a performance. A performance searched for the person everyone could blame. An investigation searched for the reason the failure was possible. Rachel remained standing near the galley, reviewing the notes from the interview. Victor Hale looked exhausted. Not physically, professionally. Maya recognized the expression. She had seen it on executives when they discovered that a problem inside their organization was not caused by one careless employee, but by a process that had quietly rewarded the wrong behavior. How many other reservations were flagged this way? Maya asked. Rachel looked up. We don't know yet. Then that should be the next question. Victor nodded. I agree. Maya looked at him. That was the first time she believed he was listening rather than managing the situation. But listening was only the beginning. What happens now? She asked. Rachel answered. We expand the review. To what? Similar premium seating verification cases. Same access pathway. Same type of manual override. Maya nodded. That was the right direction, not because she wanted to prove she was part of a larger pattern. Because if a system had failed once, the responsible question was whether it had failed elsewhere. Daniel Reeves returned from the cockpit with another update. The captain has approved additional time for the review. Victor glanced toward him. The passengers? They've been informed there is an operational compliance delay. Maya almost smiled. Even now, the airline was choosing its words carefully. Operational compliance delay. Not passenger dispute, not executive issue, not unauthorized change. Language-shaped perception. Rachel opened another document. This is something we found during the secondary review. Maya looked down. 5 previous situations where premium passengers had been moved after boarding began. Maya scanned the information. Were these investigated under Protocol 7? No. Why not? Rachel answered honestly. Because none of them reached the threshold. Maya studied the page. What threshold? An internal trigger requiring review. What created the trigger this time? Rachel paused, then looked at her. Your seat was assigned correctly. The reassignment happened after boarding. The change involved restricted access, and the passenger affected requested verification. Maya understood. The system did not discover the problem by itself. The system discovered the problem because someone challenged it. That realization bothered her more than she expected. A process that only protected people who had enough confidence, knowledge, or influence to question it was not truly protecting everyone. What happened to the other passengers? She asked. Rachel looked down. They accepted the changes. Did they receive explanations? Some did. In thought. Because that was the moment the story became larger than her. She had entered the aircraft expecting a flight. Instead, she had uncovered a question about how many people quietly accepted decisions made about them because fighting the decision seemed harder than living with it. Victor spoke. We need to address this immediately. Maya looked at him. What does immediately mean? Victor understood the question. Not a statement, a test. It means we pause all manual premium seat reassignments until the review is complete. Rachel looked at him. That will affect operations. Yes, it could create delays. Victor nodded. Yes, Maya watched the exchange. This was different from the dramatic reactions people expected from powerful people. No threats, no demands, no public humiliation, just a difficult decision with a real cost. That was what accountability looked like. Not pretending consequences did not exist. Accepting them. Daniel received another message. The airline has confirmed the executive committee has approved an independent audit. Rachel nodded. That means external review of the process. Maya looked at Victor. Because of me? Victor answered carefully. Because of what happened to you. A small difference, but an important one. Maya looked back at the list of previous cases. Her name was the reason the door opened. But the problem behind that door belonged to more than one person. The captain announced that boarding would resume shortly. Passengers began preparing their belongings. The flight was finally moving forward, but Maya remained seated for another moment. She looked at seat 2A, the seat that had started everything, a piece of leather, a number on a ticket, a small space on an airplane. And yet, around that space, people had revealed what they trusted, what they ignored, and what they were willing to question. Rachel gathered the documents. "We'll need your cooperation during the audit." Maya picked up her laptop bag. "I'll cooperate." Rachel nodded. "Thank you." Maya stood. "But I want one thing clear." Rachel waited. "I don't want this fixed because I'm a CEO." She looked toward the cabin. "I want it fixed because the next person in this seat might not have a title anyone recognizes." For a moment, nobody responded. Then Rachel slowly nodded. Because that was the question the airline could no longer avoid. Not who Maya Ellison was, not what company she owned, not what influence she had. The real question was whether the system worked only when someone powerful demanded that it work, or whether it worked for everyone. The flight finally departed 43 minutes later. For most passengers, the delay became a story they would tell once and forget. A strange first-class seating issue, a captain's announcement, a compliance review nobody fully understood. But for Maya Ellison, the delay followed her long after the aircraft left the runway, because she knew something many people learned only after years inside large organizations. A system rarely changes because someone discovers a problem. It changes when enough people become uncomfortable with leaving it untouched. During the flight, Maya did not spend her time reviewing the company emails waiting on her laptop. She reviewed the documents Rachel had provided, the previous cases, the access logs, the language used in the reports. She was not looking for someone to punish. She was looking for the pattern. And patterns rarely announced themselves. They appeared in repetition, a phrase used too often, a decision approved too quickly, a question nobody thought to ask. When the aircraft landed in Denver, Maya expected reporters. She expected someone from the airline's communications team. Instead, she found only Rachel waiting near the gate. That surprised her. "You came all the way here?" Rachel nodded. "The audit team begins tomorrow morning." Maya adjusted her bag. "Tomorrow?" "Yes." That was fast. Rachel gave a small, tired smile. It became clear that waiting would create more questions than answers. Maya appreciated the honesty. They walked through the terminal together. The airport moved around them. Announcements echoed overhead. Travelers rushed between gates. Employees handled ordinary problems that had nothing to do with executives, investigations, or compliance failures. That was the strange thing about large systems. A major failure could happen inside them while everything else continued normally. Did Thomas get suspended? Why? Because the review has not concluded. Again, that answer mattered. Rachel was not giving Maya the satisfying response. She was giving her the responsible one. "He has been removed from decision-making access during the investigation," Rachel continued. "That makes sense." Maya stopped near the terminal windows. "What about Victor?" Rachel looked surprised. "What about him? Is he being investigated?" That was important. A strong review did not protect someone simply because they helped expose the problem afterward. Everyone connected to the process had to be examined. Rachel noticed Maya's reaction. "You expected that? I expected you to say his cooperation changed the standard." "It doesn't." "Good." Rachel smiled slightly. "You keep saying that, because consistency matters." For years, Maya had watched organizations create exceptions for powerful people. Rules for employees. Different rules for executives. Different rules again for people who generated revenue. A fair system was not one that punished everyone. It was one that applied the same questions regardless of status. Before leaving, Rachel handed Maya an envelope. "What is this?" "Your formal copy of the Protocol 7 findings so far." "We are." Maya nodded. Then she noticed something written on the first page, a section titled Process Improvement Recommendations. She opened it. The recommendations were not dramatic. No public statements. No symbolic gestures. No promises to do better. Instead, independent review of premium seating overrides, mandatory documentation for post-boarding changes, additional approval requirements, quarterly audit sampling. Bias Awareness Review for Employees with Discretionary Authority. Maya read the list carefully. These were the kinds of changes people rarely celebrated because they did not create a powerful moment. But they prevented future ones. This is the part people usually skip, Maya said. Rachel looked at her. What part? The boring part. Rachel laughed quietly. The boring part? The part where nobody gets applause because the system simply works better. Rachel nodded. I think that is usually the hardest part. Maya looked back at the airport. She thought about seat 2A. She had spent years building technology designed to prevent failures before they happened. But she had forgotten something. Human systems were different. They required people willing to stop and ask why. There is something I wanted to tell you. Maya waited. When this started, some people internally thought this would become a customer complaint issue. Maya smiled faintly. And what did it become? Rachel looked toward the terminal. A process issue. Maya nodded. That was the difference. A complaint asked, why was this person unhappy? A process review asked, why did this happen? One focused on emotion. The other searched for causes. Before they separated, Rachel said one more thing. The independent audit may uncover more. Maya looked at her. There it is again. Maya adjusted her bag. If the problem exists, I want to know about it. Then she walked away. She had arrived at the airport as a passenger fighting for a seat. She left as the person who forced a system to examine itself. But the most important thing she carried with her was not the apology, not the investigation, not even the changes. It was the knowledge that the next person who questioned a decision might not have her resources, her experience, or her voice, and that was exactly why the system needed to work before they ever had to ask. 3 weeks later, Maya Ellison received the final audit report. It arrived early in the morning before her first meeting, sitting quietly in her inbox between routine business updates and engineering reports. The subject line was simple. Protocol 7 Independent Review. Final findings. Maya stared at it for a few seconds before opening it. Not because she was nervous. Because she knew reports like this rarely contained only one answer. They contained everything people did after the truth became impossible to ignore. She read slowly. The audit confirmed the original finding. Her seat assignment had been valid. The reassignment had been unauthorized. The reservation flag had been created without sufficient factual basis. But the report contained something more important than those conclusions. It explained how the failure happened. Thomas Avery had not acted alone, not because someone instructed him directly. Because the system had trained employees to rely on assumptions when dealing with premium service decisions. The audit found that employees with discretionary access had too much freedom to interpret irregular situations without requiring documented reasons. The phrase sounded harmless, but it created room for personal judgment to become operational action. 3 other cases were reopened, not because they were identical to Maya's. They were not. Each passenger had a different situation, different reasons, different outcomes. But the same question appeared repeatedly. Who decided the situation was unusual before verifying the facts? Maya leaned back in her chair. That was the part that stayed with her. The problem had never been one seat. The seat was only where the system became visible. Later that afternoon, she joined a virtual meeting with Rachel, Victor, and several members of the airline's compliance team. Victor looked different, not defeated, more careful, the kind of careful that came from realizing confidence alone could not protect an organization. We have accepted the audit recommendations, Victor said. Maya nodded. What happens next? Rachel answered. Manual premium seating overrides now require documented justification. Who reviews them? Not the same department requesting them. Maya appreciated that. A common mistake in organizations was asking the same people who created a problem to investigate themselves. What about employee training? She asked. Victor responded. That has started. Maya looked at the report. Training is important. She paused. But training alone does not fix incentives. The room became quiet, because everyone knew she was right. People often blamed individuals because it was easier than examining the environment that encouraged certain decisions. Rachel nodded. We added a quarterly review process based on what? Patterns. Rachel smiled. You really like that word. Maya smiled back. I like when systems do what they were designed to do. After the meeting ended, Maya remained at her desk. For years, she had believed success meant building something valuable enough that people could not ignore it. Her company, her technology, her results. But the airline incident reminded her of something uncomfortable. Achievement did not remove assumptions. Sometimes it simply raised the cost of challenging them. A few days later, Maya received a message from Evelyn Hart, the woman who had unknowingly occupied seat 2A. They had exchanged contact information after the investigation, not because they became close friends overnight, but because both understood that the morning had changed something. The message was short. I wanted you to know I spoke during the review. I told them what I saw at the gate. Maya read it twice, then replied, Thank you. A minute later, another message arrived. I almost didn't. Maya looked at the screen. Evelyn continued, I thought it wasn't my problem. I thought someone else would handle it. Maya understood. That was how many systems survived, not because everyone agreed with what happened, because enough people decided it was easier not to become involved. She typed her response carefully. Most changes begin when someone decides it is their problem. She did not send anything longer. She did not need to. The audit was complete. The policy changes were underway. The people responsible were being reviewed through the proper process. The core problem had been answered. But 1 month after the flight, Maya received one more message. Not from the airline. From a transportation safety organization. They had reviewed the public summary of the Protocol 7 changes. They wanted to discuss whether similar review standards could be applied across the industry. Maya read the message, then closed her laptop. Not because she was finished, because she understood the difference between chasing a victory and accepting a responsibility. The first-class seat had been returned. The system had been corrected. But the question that started everything remained larger than one airline. What happens when nobody powerful is sitting in seat 2A? And now Maya had a choice. She could return to building technology alone. Or she could step into a larger conversation about the systems that decided who was believed before they ever spoke.